The Idiot's Lantern. I'm just gonna say this one's terrible. I hated everything about it.
Okay, stick with me on this.
Okay.
There is a YouTube channel by the name of Suede who reviews and has been doing for like the past couple of years episodes of Pokemon. And their rating system involves something called the Dark Ball, which is what you give an episode, even if other things about it work, even if the animation is fine, even if there's no real issues with the plot, even if there are some funny jokes. You give it a Dark Ball if there's actively harmful, toxic messaging. And that is this episode. The Idiot's Lantern, for like 95% of its runtime, is fine. It's a pretty straightforward, unremarkable, like fun story. I dare even say one of Mark Gaddis's better stories. And then you get to the last couple of minutes where we decide, oh, your dad was abusive and also in the episode's own words, 1 degree removed from fascism. And we're just like, no, it's fine. He's your dad, right? He's your family. That's all that matters. You're a smart kid. You just helped save the world. I'm sure that it's fine to like consign you for spending however long it's going to take you to save your dad's soul because that's your job, right? You're obligated to do that. No, I'm sorry. This, I refuse.
He says, good riddance, as his dad's walking down. Rose says, oh, but he's your dad. And he goes, oh, but he's an idiot. And she goes, yeah, he's your dad. Yeah, exactly. As if like, oh, the behavior that he's been doing throughout the rest of the episode is just like, oh, it's just what dads do, isn't it? It's just like, you know, dads are all pieces of garbage. And
mother-in-law over her head that he's abusive. He's not just a bad dad. He is abusive, literally, physically and emotionally abusive to his wife and child.
Rose literally met her dad and in series 1 and literally like saw like all these admirable qualities in him, the way he sacrificed himself to save the world. And then her line here at the end of the Idiot's Lantern is basically, yeah, of course he's an idiot. All dads are stupid, aren't they?
Like, being abusive to his wife and child isn't bad enough. We also, like, explicitly say he ratted out all of the townspeople, all of his neighbors who had their faces taken away. So when they push him far enough, he's like, your mom was a thing, like a filthy, disgusting thing. And like, he's having a spaz attack. This guy is broken inside. This man is a bad person. He is, again, 1 degree removed from basically being a Nazi. That's the thing. For one, the episode agrees with her. And 2, she's not saying say goodbye. She's saying he deserves to have a relationship with you no matter how bad he is. And I'm sorry, that's just not true. Earlier when the doctor's like, brand new world, no room for a man like him, I'm just like, yes, that's true. He needs to be cut out of this guy's life. He needs to be cut out of his wife's life. He needs to be cut out of the like community of this town. He's actively made life worse for every single living being in this episode. He's almost a Nazi. He's terrible. Ending the episode the way that we do, we're basically saying it's your responsibility as the child, sort of like try and rehabilitate or fix your terrible, toxic, almost Nazi parent. And I just can't get behind that. That's actively harmful. This is a show that children will watch and internalize that message and be like, even if your parent is abusive, even if your parent hurts other people outside of yourself, even if your parent is an actual fascist, then it's your job to stick with them until they get better. And if you can't do it, then you're just not good enough.
The worst part about that ending is that I actually think Rose is okay throughout most of this episode compared to like the rest of series 2. She's like, she seems pretty likable at least throughout most of this. Whereas through the rest of series 2, she saw like a pathetic child pining over the doctor. Here she feels more like, I think, series 1 Rose again.
What bothers me about the ending is if you go with the idea that, you know, people as bad as the character, they kind of milk how much of a dillhole he is throughout it, but it's a very resonant portrayal of a man like him, a very traditionalist, abusive person who uses his traditionalism to abuse his position of power. Even I do believe people like that can change. The problem is the episode is saying the burden of the change is on good people to do it, or worse yet, the son, one of his victims, should be the one to reach out to him and change him. And no, that's not how that works. Children are not responsible for their parents' actions, and they're definitely not responsible for their parents' rehabilitation. If the parent wants to change their abusive behavior, they do it on their own. Again, it's a very complicated and very murky position we're going into because we're talking about abuse here. And I don't know anybody's background. I don't know any of us are qualified enough to discuss topics like this. What I will say is that the idea that this kid should be the one to reach out and help his father is complete crap. And for what they were doing with the wife standing up to him, and her little arc was probably one of the best part of the episode. It's just self-contained, very few scenes, but you really get the impact of her growth and her throwing him on his ass. That stuff's great. It's just last minute we decide, oh no, you should be the one to change an abuser. You, abuse victim, should be the one to rehabilitate the abuser. That's complete crap. That is a terrible, terrible message. And as Nick said, not really one you should put towards children, especially children who are watching it, who might be in that situation and could internalize that message in a really negative way.
Yeah, because we all know you can just turn your dad or your abusive parent around if you just work hard enough. They have to want it, first of all.
I feel it was a bad idea to start with the ending because there's more of an episode.
Yeah, the ending, I think, is sort of the only really notably bad part about it. I mean, it's kind of detached from the main story in a way. It's, in a sense, at least the plot.
Yeah, my only real gripes is that it starts off really strong, and I really like the idea. The whole advent of the Queen's coronations was one of the main reasons why a lot of British people got televisions in their home. It's kind of the start of like the TVs using that story as a way to bring in a horror element to it. That's really clever, good idea. And it starts off decent enough. There's a decent enough setup, but it kind of meanders in the pace around the midway point. It never really recovers for me. I find the villain going hungry to be extremely grating by the first time, never mind the 20th time she started saying it. It's Yoris Lynn, who was a really frequent Doctor Who director, so it's actually really well directed. It's got some nice shot composition. It the scenes flow very well. There's a bit where they're climbing up, even though I don't notice that they're just on a set crawling up something, and you really do feel the impact that these people are going to fall to their deaths if they miss up.
Yeah, this was a really well-directed episode.
Like I said, this stuff with the dad until the ending, like I said, it's a bit overdone, but I think Mark Gatiss kind of is very hammy in his writing anyway, so that's fine. Like I said, it was impactful enough until that final moment. Also, like, the Doctor gets really, really mad over Rose being taken, and you see his righteous fury, and Tennant's always really good at the righteous anger, and then it just kind of, he stops and becomes a Doctor again. It just kind of disappeared really randomly. Also, I feel that the police character is kind of superfluous when we have an entire mini cast to already develop. Like I said, all these are nitpicks. The only real issue I think all of us have is the ending. So I agree, it's fine, except the ending is
like almost every other Mark Gatiss episode, in that it has a really good idea. Like you said, at first glance, the idea is fantastic. Like, Mark Gatiss is a guy who knows his history. The fact that he can think of this premise is really very clever. Queen's coronation was when British people first got televisions. It was all over England. So it's the perfect opportunity for this alien to suck people's faces off through the TV.
It's like Demons of Punjab with the Indian Pakistani thing. It's a really clever, cute little way to teach people history that they may not know about. It's a really fun idea that I don't think I would have really thought about. So yeah, great idea.
Yeah. With Demons of Punjab, they made a really interesting story about it to an extent. Whereas with this episode, it just sums up Mark Gatiss's problem. He can write sort of episodes that are fine. They have a clever premise and they're kind of fun to watch. I wouldn't say this episode is boring. Like, it's well directed, it has some funny lines, it's got a little bit of action in it, good setting. And yet, there's just no drama to it. The villain is hammy. The dad character is hammy. All of the side characters, actually, I think, are very one-dimensional and corny. I just couldn't really get into the whole family storyline very much. Even if I could understand the intention behind it, I understood the message behind it, but they screwed it up by the end anyway. Just didn't really get into it. It's just Mark Gatiss. His episodes aren't bad on paper. Would you watch them again once, and you'll think, that was all right? But would you actually watch it a second time?
Gatiss episodes in general is that, like I said, on paper, his ideas sound so much fun. Like Victory of the Daleks. The Daleks are manipulating Winston Churchill in World War II and pretending to be on the Allied side. That's a great pitch. I want to see that story. And what we got was Victory of the Daleks.
In fact, I would say about Victory of the Daleks, though, that episode would have been legitimately good if it was a two-parter. The main problem with it is, the 45-minute runtime. I think it's way more ambitious than, every other episode he's written, besides Sleep No More, but we know how that went. Victory of the Daleks actually shows some promise in like the first 20 minutes, and then the rest of the episode is just jumble of like complete lunacy.
In Doctor Who, anyway, he never really delivers on the promise of his ideas, which I never really understood, because like I like his earlier scripts in Sherlock. I've heard League of Gentlemen supposed to be great. He is a really good, strong writer. He's
An Adventure in Space and Time.
Adventure in Space and Time is one of my favorite Doctor Who related media during the 2005 onwards era. I really love that story. He is a strong writer. I never understand why his Doctor Who scripts just never work for me, or they never really hit the impact they're meant to. It might be something that we will explore as we go on, because he's very, very prominent in the Moffat era.
I started us off with the ending because I really don't have much to say outside of that. In contrast to Rob, I enjoy the rest of this. Like, you're right, it's pretty thin and shallow, but like, this is one of the Gaddis episodes where I would be like, you know what, I would go back to this every once in a while just because it's a cheesy, fun, self-contained adventure, and I like those. The ending just sours it so much for me. And like, we're going to get to Victory of the Daleks soon enough. That I have my hot takes about. My take is that like, Gaddis has never been overly great as a writer. He's written the occasional great thing, but I feel like on the whole, his output has been really lukewarm, and it's gotten worse with time, and his most recent Sherlock stuff, most recent Doctor Who stuff, has been some of the laziest, lamest, most boring stuff I've ever watched. I don't know, it just sucks that even in an episode like this, where I'm like genuinely engaged, for as shallow as it can be, where I'm really having a good time, and then it just ends on this note that just completely destroys my perception of the whole thing, because I'm like, it would be irresponsible to like condone this because it's really just morally bad. It really sucks that that's how this turned out, because otherwise this is one of his better scripts, I think.
I started getting into this way more than I thought I would. I was engaged until about, like, I think the halfway point, where I think after Rose has her face taken, the episode just kind of loses me a little. I also find the stuff with the Doctor's plan to be a little bit over the top. Though I love the gag of it being in a video. That was funny. This worked for me way more than I thought it would, because I wasn't really looking forward to it, and I liked it more than the last one. So I'll let Lucy talk now so I can...
I just don't like this episode at all. I've never liked it. I still don't like it. But I was just going to bring up, does anybody knows there's some like Fear Her connections? Like, they have the same thing where we're all like gathered for an event. We're all like super obsessed over it.
I don't want to brag, but I literally thought this as a kid. I remember watching Fear Her first, and I didn't actually start watching the show until like series 4. And I remember I watched Fear Her first because I had a DVD of the final 3 episodes of series 2. And I remember catching the Idiot's Lantern on this channel called Gold, which usually shows all the Doctor Who episodes from previous seasons. Yeah. I remember thinking, even as a kid, this is basically just Fear Her. They even have the same scene where the Doctor and Rose turn up at the door and are like, hello, you know, like right next to each other. It's literally been directed in the same way. Like, they're done by the same director. Euros Lynn also directed Fear Her. I realized.
Like, the whole thing takes place like on the same street for the most part. They're all just really excited about the Queen versus like the Olympics.
Have the big celebration at the end with like dinner parties and everything. It's sort of similar to the ending of Fear Her, where everybody's, you know, partying in the street for the Olympics and everything.
And they even have the abusive dad theme going on.
They have abusive dad. The Doctor and Rose like show up at a house where they have to like convince person who's like in the house to show them the female relative upstairs in the bedroom who's been like impacted by the alien thing. All they're missing is a jar of peanut butter for the Doctor to like stick his fingers in.
If you notice, like the Rebel Flesh and the Almost People is pretty much just the Hungry Earth and Cold Blood. Kill the Moon and In the Forest of the Night are both very similar as well. They have some sort of different basic things between them. Whereas like the Rebel Flesh and the Almost People, Hungry Earth, Cold Blood, almost like basically the same story. And the same with these 2 episodes.
The base premise for this episode, while it's not the same story, is obviously very similar to the Bells of St. John. This was to be brought up for her. Apparently, I heard that was originally meant to be an episode written by Stephen Fry that they replaced it with because it was unavailable. The only other thing I can think of is that people bring it up a lot, that there's the implication that, they imply the son is gay, and it plays into father's resentment. It's only 1 or 2 lines. It's an interesting enough kind of subtext, but it doesn't really add much else to the story, because they have the aunt saying, what they say about people like that.
I think they have like the typical bigoted granny character in the house.
Yeah.
Son is actually like a mummy's boy or something. And the granny just casually says, "Oh, Eddie, you're gonna have to beat that out of him."
The son also says, like, you can love who we want and stuff like that. The kid and the mother, they're somewhat decently written characters for one-offs. When I say for one-offs, as in, I will remember them after I watch the episode, because Doctor Who does a lot of one-and-done characters. Like I said, most of this episode's kind of taken by that final scene, which is annoying.
Yeah, I think this episode is just crappy overall. It reminds me way too much of Fear. I also don't like the way it's filmed. Every single frame is crooked. It's just off-putting. Looks cheap. I just not into it at all. And then, like you said, the ending is just so problematical and bad. I don't think I'll be going back to this.
I have to say about this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much exhausted this. Like, I think it works for me until it doesn't. And there's some well executed stuff that's mixed in with a myriad of crap. And I guess depending on my mood, I might be more inclined to watch it again. But mostly I just find the episode to be kind of underwhelming and just leaves me kind of with a meh note. Which is a shame, because I thought I would like it more when I started watching it. But, you know, what can you do?
For now, we can all go back to sleep.
Yeah.
There it is.
Bye.
Yeah.